And good morning. Welcome to the Bright Side. I am Pharmacist Ben. Thanks for joining us. 844-236-6010 is our number. If you have questions about health, nutrition, prescription drugs, if you want to wean yourself off your meds and get on a good nutritional supplement program, we want to hear from you. If you have a comment or success story or question about something you may have heard about or read about, we want to hear from you as well. And we also want to hear from you about how you're dealing with this whole corona mania crisis that we're dealing with. Love to hear your thoughts on masks, on social distancing, on government control, on technocracy. There's all kinds of topics we could talk about. And there's all kinds of topics that come to mind when you think about this historic time that we're dealing with. Love to hear from you. 844-236-6010 is our number. We got a guest coming up at the bottom of the hour. Kip Harris has faced cancer 3 times. He's been diagnosed with cancer 3 separate times. He's got a really inspiring story about how his experience dealing with cancer, dealing with the cancer diagnosis, taught him about the importance of living a full life, living a happy life, recognizing how we can touch other people, how we can inspire other people, and even how to find joy during chemotherapy. He writes about it in his book, Improbable Joy, a 3-time cancer survivor's journey to finding joy in unexpected places. Kip Harris at the bottom of the hour. I love inspiring stories. I think they're so darn important. And the more depressing and the more distressing and the harder the times that we're living in the harder the times that we're living in are, the more important it is to be inspired, to find something inspiring. Have you noticed that the news is not very inspiring? Have you noticed that you don't feel inspired after you watch Fox News or MSNBC or NBC or CBS or public radio or POTUS or Sirius or whatever you're listening to? Do you notice that it's very rare that you're inspired? Why is it that we're not inspired after we watch the news? Well, maybe it's because the news and the information that we're being fed is not supposed to be inspiring. We need more inspiration. Human beings are predisposed to being scared. Human beings are predisposed to living in fear. It takes a lot of evolution. It takes a lot of psychological evolution to become a parasympathetic, a PNS, parasympathetic nervous system oriented person. Most people are safety loving. And this is a primary distinction that we have. A primary distinction in humanity as a whole, and a primary distinction in our individual humanity in terms of our neurology. Safety loving versus freedom loving. This is a primary distinction. Under conditions of safety loving versus freedom loving, safety loving as opposed to freedom loving, we're going to be sympathetically activated. Our sympathetic nervous system is going to be activated. We're going to be predisposed to having a suppressed immune system, predisposed to having our muscles shrivel, predisposed to aging rapidly, predisposed to being in dis-ease. If we are safety loving primarily, we are going to be predisposed to dis-ease. Why? Because the world is not safe. The world is not a safe place. We have to make it. So we are safe. We can't depend on the world being safe. Entropy rules. Viruses happen. Accidents occur. Safety loving, this distinction of safety loving versus freedom loving is important to recognize because at any moment we have a choice. Do we want to be safe or do we want to be free? And this is a primary distinction that's going on in our culture. This is what mask wearing versus not mask wearing is about. It's about safety loving versus freedom loving. People who wear masks recognize, or who are compelled to wear masks, recognize that there's an imposition on their freedom. People who think it's okay to wear a mask, and I'm not judging here, by the way. I'm just pointing this out. People who think it's okay to wear a mask, it's okay to have governments mandate a mask, it's okay to have governments mandate lockdowns, are safety-loving. And you're never going to be able to convince a safety-loving, if you're a freedom-loving person, you're never going to be able to convince a safety-loving person that freedom is more important. And you're never going to be able to convince a freedom-loving person that safety is more important. So if you're trying to respond on Facebook or on social media, if you're trying to argue with someone on Facebook or social media, if you're trying to do a debate, if you're trying to be rational, it's not going to work. Safety-loving versus freedom-loving is a primary distinction in life, in the body, in sociology, and in society, and never the two shall meet. You can't be both safety-loving and freedom-loving at the same time. If you're safety-loving, you are willing to sacrifice your freedom. If you're freedom-loving, you are not willing to sacrifice your freedom, and it's pretty much as simple as that. Now, the fact of the matter is that our human minds are predisposed to being safety-loving. And to be freedom-loving requires evolution, it requires awareness, and it requires work. The human condition is such that we are always going to be predisposed to safety unless we work on ourselves. And this safety-loving predisposition is manipulated. We are manipulated and encouraged and compelled and directed to feel frightened, to feel scared. If you watch the news and feel frightened, you have been manipulated. If you watch the news and you don't feel inspired, you have been manipulated. If you can't sleep at night because you're scared, you have been manipulated. The news is designed intentionally to disinspire, to discourage. We watch the news, we get discouraged, and then we go for mind-numbing strategies. Sitcoms, dramas, drugs, alcohol, food. There's all kinds of ways we can numb ourselves instead of understanding what's going on in our mind, understanding the process of going on in our mind. Choose to be inspired. I've been reading this guy named Damien Eccles. Damien Eccles was a kid. He was 18 years old, or 17 years old, in Arkansas. And he was from a very poor family. And he didn't have food to eat sometimes. He lived in a squalor in a trailer in Arkansas, but he was a smart kid. And his only solace was to go read books. So he found himself reading books reading Stephen King books and reading science books and reading magic books. And he was one of those kids, those goth-type kids who would dress in black. And in this little town in Arkansas, that didn't go over well. And as it turned out, there was a triple murder, a horrific triple murder of 3 children. And because Damien was an outcast, and Damien was dressed in black, and Damien practiced magic, and Damien did all kinds of counterculture, at least counter to his culture, practices, they ended up picking on him and arresting him. And long story short, he got sentenced to death. For a crime he didn't do. Well, his case attracted a lot of attention. After 18 years of being on death row, he got out of death row, and he writes about his story. And he writes what it's like to be on death row. He writes what it's like to be on death row and be innocent. And his story is so inspiring because he somehow managed to pull through with his sanity. He somehow managed to pull through not only with his sanity intact, but being wise and being an incredible speaker. And I encourage you to go to YouTube and look him up. Damien Eccles, D-A-M-I-O-N, D-M-I-A-N-E-C-H-O-L-S, Damien Eccles. And his story is so inspiring because it could happen to any of us. Any of us could be thrown in prison for something we didn't do. Any of us can get cancer. Any of us can be into an accident. Why is this important? Because if you're not in an accident, you don't have cancer, and you're not in solitary confinement on death row for something you didn't do, you got a lot to be thankful for and a lot to be happy for. And that's part of being inspiring, is understanding how blessed we are. All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben. Got Kip Harris coming up at the bottom of the hour. We'll get your phone calls next segment, 844-236-6010. Okay, we're back on the bright side. Pharmacist Ben here. Kip Harris coming up at the bottom of the hour. Kip is a 3-time cancer diagnosis survivor. He's got a lot to be thankful for, as we all do, and we're going to talk to Kip about his inspiring story at the bottom of the hour. His book is called Improbable Joy, a 3-time cancer survivor's journey to finding joy in unexpected places. I love the idea of improbable joy and finding joy in unexpected places. We should be looking for places where we can find joy. I was vacuuming my floor today, and I was thinking, oh my God, I have a vacuum cleaner. Oh my God, I can keep my living space clean. Well, think of the little things that we have in our lives to be thankful for. I was talking about Damien Eccles before we went to break. Damien served 18 years on death row, much of it in solitary confinement. And he talks about rats and cockroaches and mosquitoes in his cell, biting his eyelids and buzzing in his ear, and nothing he could do about it. And I'm sitting in my comfortable living environment, vacuuming my floor, my nice hardwood floors. And how many of you guys have wonderful things to be thankful for, and you don't even think about it? That's the problem. We are swimming in abundance. We are immersed and saturated in good things, but because our brains are hardwired to survive, we're always on the lookout for something wrong. For most people, think about this. For most people, you get up in the morning, and the first thing you think about is what's wrong. Or the first thing you think about is what you have to do. Or the first thing you think about is the problems that you have. It's not your fault. It's the way the brain is wired. This is why safety-loving versus freedom-loving is an important distinction. Safety-loving, problem-finding, looking for problems is the way the brain is hardwired. Freedom-loving, looking for things to be joyful about, looking for things to be inspired about, takes work. It takes effort. It takes the expenditure of energy. And the brain doesn't like to expend energy. If the brain has a choice, it's not going to expend energy. If the brain has a choice, it's going to default to looking for problems. It's going to default for finding safety. It's going to default to noise. That's why people can't meditate. The reason we can't meditate is because the brain, on default, goes to noise. In fact, the noise in the head is called by scientists the default mode network, the DMN. The default mode network is the noise in the head, and it happens by default. If you want to quiet the noise in the head, or get behind the noise in the head, or observe the noise in the head, you have to expend energy. That's what meditation is about. That's what mind exercises are about. That's what all exercise is about. All exercise is about expending energy. Because the mind and the body have evolved, and we are the descendants of ancestors who did not expend energy. We are the descendants of ancestors who survived by conserving energy. We have a tendency to do that. Anyway, I love talking to inspiring people. We got Kip Harris coming up at the bottom of the hour. We'll get your calls here in just a minute. One of the all-time great, well, first of all, I should say, if you want to get through this this crazy corona mania that we're dealing with, one of the best things you can do is build your immune system. And there's all kinds of ways to do it. Food and the mind is a very important strategy for strengthening the immune system. And when we're stressed and we're in anxiety, our immune system is suppressed. A lot of times people ask me about cold sores. Cold sores are a classic example of what happens in the body when we're under duress. We get cold sores when we're under stress. We get colds when we're under stress. We get sick when we're under stress. So one of the best things you can do to support your immune system is learn to marshal your mind, the power and the energy of your mind. But you can also use nutrition and nutritional supplements. One of my favorite nutritional supplements is something that you don't hear a lot about, and that's lecithin. Lecithin is, we call it a nutritional supplement, but really lecithin is found everywhere in nature. It's found throughout the body. Every single cell, every one of the 100 trillion cells in the body contains lecithin. Lecithin is found in all plants. Lecithin is a fundamental molecule in the body, but it's got amazing health benefits when used supplementally, especially for the immune system. Supplementing with lecithin, Lecithin, can increase immune function by up to 29%. It stimulates something called the macrophage. The macrophage is a cell that eats the bad guys. Macro means big, phage means eating. Big eaters. These big eater immune cells can be increased by up to 29% by supplementation with lecithin. Macrophages eat debris and bacteria and viruses and cancer cells and all kinds of foreign matter. Also, lymphocytes, white blood cells, increase by 92% when supplemented, when animals were supplemented. This is a rat study, when rats were given lecithin. Lecithin is an amazing, amazing supplement for the brain. It's an amazing supplement for the liver. It's an amazing supplement for folks who have had their gallbladder taken out. It's a fat metabolizing supplement. There's so many benefits to lecithin. It's pretty much, it's really inexpensive. You can get a pound of lecithin for $20 or so. Look for non-GMO lecithin. And probably best to look for sunflower lecithin rather than soy lecithin. All right. 844-236-6010 is our number. Let's hit the phones and talk to our good friend, Carl the Truth Raider. What's up, Carl? How you doing, man?
I am completely recovered, I would have to say.
I need you to speak up. Carl, I need you to speak up. You're on that weird phone of yours. Speak loud and clear.
Okay, you can hear me pretty good now, right?
A little better. Go ahead.
Okay. I am completely healed, but it took a good 3 to 4 months because whatever this particular pathogen is, it comes, you treat yourself, it gets a little bit better, and then you get sick again. It goes away, then it gets a little bit better.
So what'd you do? Tell us what you did. What were your strategies here? Yeah.
I had to make sure that I had each and every one of those particular special nutrients that you need to have. Say like copper, zinc. The other ones like turmeric, onion, garlic.
How about your eating? Did you eat differently?
Yeah, I had to eat a lot of hot chicken soup, eat a lot of hot vegetables, hot meals,
Nice.
Yeah, I had to do all of that.
Beyond Tangerine, BTT.
Beyond BTT, sip the BTT, as much as I could throughout the day. Little by little, to do that, but I also had to bomb myself on it. I had to take a little bit more than normal to make everything to go through. I had to get a good workout. I had to sweat everything out. I had to go through a period of time where I had cramps. I had difficulty going to the bathroom for a while.
Did you lose your taste of smell? Hey, did you lose your sense of smell or your taste?
No, that I didn't, and I didn't. It didn't affect me as far as respiratorily. Very little effect as far as respiration, at least.
You just felt like crap. You just felt like crap.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, listen, Carl, the Truth Raider.
Yeah.
I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
Okay. And
right.
This is going to take a quick diversion. If this was your last day on Earth, how would you want to be remembered? Quick, you only got 30 seconds.
Okay. As someone on my epitaph or my epiletter would say, he was here to help other people as remembered to be the consummate substitute for someone you really wanted to have, but he was a good substitute trying to help others as much as I possibly could.
Carl, the Truth Raider, you don't know, but today might be. I don't know either, but it might be your last day on Earth. So live that way. Be inspiring. Help others. Thank you for sharing, Carl, the Truth Raider. God bless you, buddy. We'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks. All right, that's it for now. We got Kip Harris coming up at the bottom of the hour. Kip is the author of a very inspiring book. Kip has conquered cancer 3 times, a cancer diagnosis 3 times, and he's the author of a very inspiring book, Improbable Joy, a 3-time cancer survivor's journey to finding joy in unexpected places. Kip Harris coming up next on The Bright Side. Okay, we are back on The Bright Side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Thanks for being here. We're on the air Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Pacific and 10 to 11 Central, 24/7 on the archive page at benfuchsarchives.com. Also, brightsideben.com and pharmacistben.com and criticalhealthnews.com for longevity products. You can also sign up to join the Brightside Ben team off our websites, brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com. We've got news stories and blog posts and videos and lots of good health information, all free. Health information at brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, and criticalhealthnews.com. Also have my Moments of Truth up, 90-second or so videos that I do every morning on a various health topic. Today I did skincare, skin health, and keratins, and they're all up on our Facebook page, The Bright Side with Pharmacist Ben. If you want to purchase our Truth Skin Health products, go to truthtreatments.com, truthtreatments.com. And if you want to check out our over 500 5-star reviews, go to truthreviewed.com, truthreviewed.com. Okay, I am excited to speak to our guest. Kip Harris is a survivor, cancer survivor, and he survived cancer 3 times, 3 successive diagnoses. And his message is simple. He says, joy occurs in the most unexpected places. His book is Improbable Joy, a 3-time cancer survivor's journey to finding joy in unexpected places. Now is the time, folks, for inspiring stories, and Kip has got one of those. And please welcome to The Bright Side, Kip Harris. Hey, Kip.
Hey there. Good morning.
Good morning to you, and thanks for joining us. So your book, Improbable Joy, a 3-time cancer survivor's journey to finding joy in unexpected places. A lot of us, including myself, live in, I don't want to say in fear, but at least thinking about the possibilities of cancer. I think it's something like 1 out of 2 people are going to get diagnosed with some form of cancer if they live long enough anyway. And so you have had to deal with it 3 separate times. Tell us about your story specifically, and then I want to get to this idea of finding joy even in chemotherapy. So tell us a little bit about your story first.
Well, I guess my story starts way back in September of 2004 when I was mountain biking in China Camp State Park in California, and started having a side ache, and it all began there. Ended up in the ER that night and thought it was just an appendectomy, but it ended up being a rare form of cancer that starts on the appendix, and that led to 3 basic. I could go into the details of the story, but I think what was most interesting to me is listening to you talk about fear, because when I got diagnosed, I suppose I was a little bit afraid, but I never really thought I was going to die. I just sort of looked at this as a little bump in the road that I was going to have to, take care of, and never really thought I was going to die. I think I was more angry about how it was putting a dent in my life and changing my life. But fear, I think, listening to you talk about it before I came on was really interesting because, especially even lately, I think I'm learning that to come from a place of curiosity, which of course is the opposite of fear. And Amy Houston wrote this book called Top Tips for Being Happy. And I remember hearing her in an interview one time, and she reminded me in that interview, she said something to the effect that, humans aren't meant to just be happy. We're supposed to be sad. We're supposed to be fearful. We're supposed to be curious. So I think to dismiss fear as if we should never have it is a mistake, but we do need to also remind ourselves that there's something bigger, and curiosity and courage and calmness are something that can really guide us through an experience in a different way. Fear will paralyze you, whereas being mindful of what's about to happen and paying attention to what's about to happen is a completely different experience. And I think that's what I had when I went through my cancer journey.
Were you curious about your cancer? Were you curious about your chemotherapy? Could you say that?
I think back then, in the beginning, I was not curious. I was angry. But a good friend of mine, his name is JL. He's 80 years old today, so he's 30 years older than I am. I remember when I got diagnosed initially, I started calling people, and everybody without fail would give you the same typical, "Oh my gosh, Kip, I'm so sorry. That's so awful to hear. I'm so sorry you have to go through this. It's just not fair." And I get it. They're coming from a place of love and concern, and they don't want me to go through it. I called my buddy JL and told him the story about what happened, and I sat there awaiting the same typical response. And instead, what he said to me was, "Well, nobody said life was fair. Nobody said life was easy, Kip."
Wow.
And in
did that
moment,
help?
Oh my gosh, it set the stage for everything that happened to me, because he was the first person who reminded me, like, why not me? What's so special about me? People say, why me? Well, why not you? Nothing special about me.
Wow.
So he set the stage for me to figure out how to do that journey differently. Now, that didn't happen immediately, but eventually I did have an epiphany on sitting on a beach in Spain before I was to return home to start chemo. And that really is what changed the course of everything for me.
Did you find yourself when you're sitting on the beach in Spain, or before you were going through all of that stuff, did you find yourself becoming introspective, like asking questions about how you could handle this, or how you could handle it better, or where you could find meaning or purpose in it, or did you just kind of wallow in it?
Well, so what happened on the beach in Spain is I was writing in my journal, and I think I was about to go home in a couple days, and I was sitting there journaling, writing my thoughts down, and after I wrote for a little while, I went back and I reread it. And what I had just written was how I really was wishing away the next 6 months of my life. I just wanted the next 6 months to be over because I was going to miss my annual ski trip to Whistler, British Columbia. Poor me. Poor Kip doesn't get to fly to Canada and go skiing with his friends, right? Because he has to endure chemo for 6 months. I was mad about all the things that were going to change. But, excuse me. In that moment, when I reread that journal entry, I realized that I was wishing away the next 6 months of my life. And I thought, that just doesn't seem right. Like, how do you wish away 6 months of your life? So I kept writing. And as I started writing about that wishing away idea, I realized that I could, if I really tried, find something good in the most awful moments that were to come. That was the moment when I decided I'm going to find something good in the most horrible place of chemotherapy. And people ask, well, how do you teach people to do that? I don't know. For me, it really was just I made that decision, and it just started happening because I paid attention. I think the self-help industry is great, and it's wonderful, and there's a lot of great self-help books, but I believe that too often people look outside themselves for answers. And I really believe that we have to start looking inside, because we all possess what we need if we really pay attention and listen. And for me, that was the lesson. Listen to myself. Pay attention.
You said it 3 times already, and it's really important, I think. You said, just pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. Said 3 times in the last minute or so. So we got to take a break, but I want to talk about how paying attention, how being aware of the details of our experience rather than glossing them over or wishing them away, how that can help us get through things, including something as severe as you went through. And then we'll talk about this concept of improbable joy, which I absolutely love. I don't know if you heard me talking about my vacuum cleaner experience this morning. I was vacuuming my floor.
I did.
Did you? I was thinking how incredible it was that I got to vacuum my floor. So, all right, we'll talk about that when we come back from our break. Kip Harris is on the bright side, and we're talking about his book, Improbable Joy. Kip was diagnosed with cancer 3 times, so he knows of which he speaks. I am Pharmacist Ben. We'll be back with Kip Harris on the bright side right after this. We are back on the bright side. We're talking to Kip Harris, author of the book Improbable Joy, a 3-time cancer survivor's journey to finding joy in unexpected places. Kip is a 3-time cancer diagnosis survivor. Kip, before we went to break, you were talking about this idea of paying attention, which I absolutely love. Tell us about what you mean by paying attention and how you can use that skill, if you will, of paying attention to get by the ups and downs, the normal vicissitudes that life just brings to the table. How can attention and awareness help us get through?
So for me, in particular, going through chemotherapy and cancer, we all know that that's not a fun and joyful experience. And when people hear me talk about, joy in cancer, they think, well, cancer is not joyful. That's a ridiculous sentiment or notion, right? And I'm not suggesting that chemotherapy and cancer are joyful, but there are moments in there that are absolutely joyful. And I can tell you a story about one moment that, I could tell you several moments, but I guess one that sort of stands out is, I remember it was my 3rd surgery. I had the surgery on December 5th, 2007. It was 13-and-a-half-hour surgery. I had chemo on the operating table, and I got really sick in the hospital. I got an infection. And I've been through cancer and chemo 3 times, and that was the only time that I ever wanted to die. I never thought I was going to die through most of it, but that was the only time that I really wanted to die because it was just so excruciating. They couldn't get my temperature under control. I had a temperature of 104, and I remember this moment in a haze of this physician standing at the foot of my bed. He was probably a resident or an intern, and I remember him sort of callously asking the nurses, "Did you give him ibuprofen?" And they were like, "Yeah, we gave him ibuprofen." They said, "Well, give him some acetaminophen, see if that works." And he walked out. And I thought, this guy, I'm just a piece of meat to him. I'm just a diagnosis. And right after that happened, this nurse came up to the side of my bed, and I remember it as clear as I'm sitting here right now. I'm laying in my bed. She came to my left side, and I don't remember her face. I don't know her name, but I will never forget her as long as I live because she touched my arm. She leaned down, and she said very quietly in my ear, she said, "Kip, I know what we need to do. You're not going to like it, but I know what we need to do." That is joy right there. In that moment when I wanted to die, that was the only time I ever wanted to die, that nurse loved me. And what she did, I didn't like it. She put ice between my legs, under my armpit. She brought my temperature down, and I got better.
Wow.
So the point about paying attention is, most people, I think, could look back on that moment and just think, oh, my gosh, that was just a horrifying experience. I had a temperature of 104, and they couldn't get it down. And that's what we talk about, right? But I don't remember that part as much. I remember that nurse, and I remember that she loved me.
That's beautiful.
And I think if you're not paying attention, you don't see that.
Wow.
That part just goes away.
Do you think there's always something there that we could pay attention to that will expand us, like love?
I think there's always something there. I absolutely believe there's always something else going on. It's just that we've been programmed or brought up to sort of focus on whatever the loudest noise is. I mean, we could talk about the media and politics and all of that is the same thing. That loudest noise gets the most attention. And it's the same for everything that's happening in our own lives. We have to be able to sort of distill that, quiet it down so that we can see and hear everything else that's happening around us.
Wow. And paying attention is the key, or being aware is the key.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, making that intention to just see it.
I love it. Do you have a meditation practice by any chance?
You know, it's kind of funny you should ask that, because my friend Rob, who lives in San Francisco, has challenged me to start. There's a 21-day challenge on 10%. There's an app that he made me download, and I'm starting today.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Consider my question the universe acknowledging you and encouraging you, because it's amazing. But you're talking. I'm sure you're going to fall right into it, because you've already experienced it in the kind of situation that none of us can actually even relate to, almost dying. And your explanation of awareness is kind of like what meditation is all about. It's about being aware of your body, and also that gets me to talking about your book, being aware of joy. Like you say, finding joy in unexpected places. That has something to do with being aware. You have to be aware to be able to find joy in unexpected places. Correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And I think, like I said, before that experience where I was journaling and writing about, basically wishing away the next 6 months, just I want chemo to be over. I want my life to be back the way it was. That's how I started my journey. And I wonder if a lot of people don't go through that journey the whole way like that. I absolutely hate the phrase fight cancer. I think it's a nonsensical thing that the universe has put on cancer patients, that they have to fight this thing that's happening within them. I don't think it helps to fight. I'm not
What do you say
suggesting
instead?
you give up.
What do you say instead?
I say pay attention. This is the journey that you're meant to walk. Fighting it and pushing against it is not going to change it. I have cancer. Me resisting the idea that I have cancer is not going to change the fact that I have cancer. To me, I have to embrace it and say, this is the journey I'm meant to walk. Wow. I am supposed to learn something in this process. And instead, people go through it with just this idea that they want to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong.
We're always fighting.
I did everything I could to get rid of it, okay? I'm not saying I didn't. But at the same time, I acknowledged that was the journey, that was the experience, that was my life at the time. And cancer is part of that. And it's a weird thing, because I don't want anybody else to get cancer, and yet for me, it was probably the greatest joy of my life. It brought me, it taught me things about myself that I would still be living in Oakland, California, Piedmont, if I hadn't gotten cancer. I was in a high-stress job that I wasn't really liking much anymore, and cancer made me realize that that's not what I was supposed to be doing.
Okay, so how would you apply your wisdom and everything you just talked about to what we're going through as a culture and as a society today with COVID?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess I come back to paying attention for one. Coming from a place of love and coming from a place of curiosity for me is key. If you just for me, it's curiosity. I always ask questions about why. Even when it comes to, I just did a video blog last night about politics, because one of my neighbors and I don't agree on politics. But we had this really amazing conversation at my front door where we didn't agree. But at the end of that conversation, I looked at her and I said, I still love you, right? And she looked at me and she smiled and she's like, I love you too, Kip.
Oh,
and
that's beautiful.
Yeah, I've never said that. So I guess for me, it's just coming from a place of curiosity and not judging. And COVID's hard. We just have to remember that it's a blip on the radar of our life.
A historical blip.
Just like, it's a historical blip. Just like chemo was for me. But instead of wishing it away, which is what I think a lot of people want to do with cancer and chemo, I did that in the beginning. Don't wish it away. And I find myself saying the same thing, God, I wish this COVID stuff was over. Oh, I wish we could stop wearing masks and stop social distancing. But I think that's a mistake. I think that we ought
You're wishing your life away when you do that. You're wishing your life away, basically.
Are.
Yeah, because it's part of your life.
And here's the thing. I have an ostomy as a result of my 3 surgeries. I've had a permanent ostomy for 14 years. And so I belong to an ostomy support group here locally. Well, when COVID came, We couldn't meet in person anymore. So we kind of scrambled, and at the last minute one day, I said to one of the other board members, I said, let's just throw it out there and try it on Zoom. Let's see what happens. It was a Friday night. Our meeting was the next day. The next day, we had people show up in that Zoom meeting who otherwise wouldn't be able to show up because they didn't have transportation to get to the meeting.
Wow.
So COVID's here to teach us something. We have been connecting in a meeting in person for a long time, and that's good. But we neglected to think about those that couldn't come. And so there's good things that are coming out of this. I remember when it first started, my family and I, we used to FaceTime as a whole family every night. I was getting tired of seeing my family. I was seeing them so much, right?
That's great. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Hey, we're out of time, Kip. The book's Improbable Joy, a 3-time cancer survivor's journey to finding joy in unexpected places. Kip Harris. Hey, Kip, how do we get your video blog?
You can go to my website at improbablejoy.com, and if you register there, I'll send you the introduction to the book so you can read it and see what you think, and I'd love feedback. improbablejoy.com.
Kip, you're totally inspiring. Thank you so much. God bless you, and good luck with everything. Kip Harris, Improbable Joy, a 3-time cancer survivor's journey to finding joy in unexpected places. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful, beautiful, awesome, spectacular day. We'll talk to you later, folks. Bye for now.